In this lettings finance video, we are going to be covering tenancy finance. That will include setting up a tenancy, charging your initial rent and deposit, any permitted payments you may have, producing a tenancy statement, and the rent charge process. Jumping over into Expert Agent. There are a couple of ways you can create your tenancies within the system. Hopefully you've covered those already in your lettings training. But if you do need a refresher on the different ways you can create those tenancy records, please do refer back to your lettings training. The way we're going to use in this video is via the property record. So I'm going to use my quick find in the top right hand corner to search for my property record. I'm going to click on my property record to open it, and I'm going to go to my tenancies tab. I'm going to click to add a new tenancy in the bottom left hand corner. And we're going to enter the details that Expert Agent requires into the Add a New Tenancy wizard. So my rent amount and my rent frequency are pulling through from the advertising details we've used on this property. So if we've let the property for the advertised amount and frequency, we can leave those as are. But if we need to edit either the amount or the frequency that we're using there, we can overtype or change in the drop down. We're going to leave the tick in the box for automatically charge rent because we want Expert Agent to alert us to the fact that the rent is due each month on this tenancy. We've got management type here, so we're going to select our management type from the list. For me, that's going to be fully managed, but obviously set that accordingly. We've then got percentage management fee, so I'm going to pop 10 in there. It's really important that you fill that percentage management fee field in, because this will be the field that forces your charge through to your landlord each month. So because I've popped 10% in there, each time we receive rent in on this tenancy, my landlord will automatically be charged 10% of what we've received. We've then got deposit amount, so that's one straight month for me there, £2,000, but if any different you can overtype that at this stage. And we will be holding a deposit. Availability date is pulling through from my advertising details, so at this stage of the process this isn't really relevant to me. Agreement type, I'm going to select a standard 6-month AST. I'll select myself as the negotiator, and then when I'm happy I'm going to click the save icon in the bottom right hand corner, and that will create my tenancy record for me and open that up on the screen. You'll see at the top here this is now a pending tenancy. The information we entered into the wizard there on the right hand side is pulled through into this column. Now we have our tenancy record, we need to enter some tenants into the tenancy. So to do that, we're going to go to the Tenants tab in the grey bar, and we're going to go to Add a Tenant in the bottom left hand corner. We'll click the plus icon alongside Select a Tenant, and that will open up our applicant quick find for us, so we can type their name into search for them. If the process has happened quite quickly and they aren't an applicant that are already registered, you can use the person with the plus icon in the bottom right hand corner to add them in at this stage. So once I've found my tenant, I've got another opportunity at this stage to confirm the rent amount and the rent frequency along with the deposit amount. If we ask our tenants to pop a reference on their standing order, we can pop that reference in here, and that will link that reference to our tenant for us. Once we're happy, we can save. If we've got multiple tenants moving in and we need to add multiple people into the tenancy, we can continue to click the Add a Tenant button and add any additional tenants that are moving into the property. With any additional tenants, the way you set them up will very much depend on how your tenants are paying their rent. For example, if Miss Aitchison and Mr. Wayne are a couple and they will be paying one monthly rental to us of £2,000 from one bank account, so we'll be getting one receipt in from them, we'll set them up with Miss Aitchison as the lead tenant having the full £2,000 rent alongside her, and Mr. Wayne having a zero rent. That way we'll get one rent charge for £2,000 raised each month. If they are sharers, for example, and they're making separate payments to us, so each would be paying £1,000, in that scenario, we would set them both up with their £1,000 and that will mean we'll have one charge raised for each of them each month for that £1,000, so we can see who's paid, who's in arrears, etc. if we need to. So the way you set those up will very much depend on the way those tenants are paying that monthly rental to you. We'll just change that back on this occasion. So now we've told Expert Agent who has applied for the property. The next thing we need to look at in terms of the financials will be any holding fee that you may or may not have taken on the property. So if the tenant pays a nominal holding fee to you to reserve the property, this would be the stage that you would add that into the system. And the way you would add that in is by right-clicking on the tenancy record, going to your financial submenu, and going to receive payment right at the bottom. You'll select the tenant, so that will be our lead tenant, Miss Aitchison on this occasion. Received from, this will always default to the tenant's name, but if someone else has paid that money on their behalf, so say for example you've got a student moving into the property and their parents have paid this money for them, you can overtype the received from with exactly who's paid that money to you. You'll then have the amount received, so we'll pop our figure in there that they've paid to us. We'll confirm that that's come into our client bank account. We'll confirm the date they've made that payment to us and the payment method, selecting that from the drop down there. We've got the opportunity to add a payment reference or payment notes, so we could pop in there that this was the holding fee, and then we're going to save. We're expecting a green pop-up in the bottom right hand corner to confirm that that payment has been received successfully. And once we've seen that pop up, if we then go to the statement tab of our tenancy, we'll see that receipt posted on there, and this pending tenancy now has a balance in hand of £200. Presumably the next thing we would do would then be to submit our tenants for referencing, etc. We're going to fast forward through that bit in this video because it doesn't really affect the finance. But again, if you do need some more assistance on that, please do refer back to your lettings videos. Once your tenants have passed referencing, and your landlord, etc. have agreed that you're happy for the tenants to move in, the next thing we'll be doing is marking our tenancy as let. The way we're going to do that is we're going to right click on the tenancy record and come to change status, and then we'll have mark as let in the middle. The first page will be some admin for you to complete. Do we want to change the property status to let and mark our applicants as inactive? Probably because we won't want to be advertising the property anymore or sending our applicants any more details of new properties coming on. And do we want to update their address with the property they're moving into? Again, probably. That's why all four are ticked, but obviously if you need to untick any of those, you can. We'll then have the start date, so we'll set the start date of our tenancy. Let's just assume that's going to be Monday the 20th of May. What you'll notice in terms of the following dates is that they are all linked to that start date. So I've updated my start date to the 20th of May. My term expiry, because I've set this tenancy up to be a standard 6-month AST when we were creating it initially, is now falling 6 months after my start date. If I was to change that to the 27th, you'll see that term expiry updates accordingly there. If I'd set this tenancy up initially as a 12-month AST, all the dates would update accordingly. So your dates automatically populate based on the tenancy agreement type you've selected and the start date you enter here. If you need to manually adjust any of them, you can, again just by using the calendar alongside them. When you're happy with your dates, you're going to use the right-hand facing arrow in the bottom corner of the screen, and that will take you through to your charges page. So we'll have options for charge rent and charge deposit here. So we'll start with charge rent. When I tick the charge rent tick box, the following will appear. The first option, as with all of our financial transactions, will be the transaction date. That will always default to today's date. If you need to change that for any reason, you can do using the calendar alongside. Expert Agent will then guess what it thinks you want to charge based on the information you've entered so far. So that's a £2,000 for our lead tenant, Miss Aitchison, from the 20th of May to the 19th of June. So I'll tick that there. And because we've set Mr. Wayne up with a zero rent amount, the zeros pulled through there, so we don't need to tick him. If you have the scenario where you're not wanting to charge a monthly rent, say for example you needed to prorata that rent charge because your tenants had asked to change their rent date to the 1st of the month, I can use the calendar icon there alongside my rent to date to set that to the 30th of June. An expert agent has calculated that pro rata rent for me for the additional days there to take the rent for the first period up to the 30th of June, and then the first full month of £2,000 will be due on the 1st of July. So no need to calculate that manually, that's being done automatically for you by the system. If I change that back to the 19th, that'll alter back to £2,000 for me. So check you're happy with your rent amounts. Once you're happy, you can move on to deposit, so I'll tick charge deposit underneath. Again, the first option we get is the transaction date. We've then got charge deposit to, so that will default to our lead tenant, but you can change that if need be. And we've got one final opportunity to confirm the deposit amount at £2,000 there. The bit underneath here, deposit allocation, this bit's really important. What this section will do is it will tell expert agent what needs to happen with those deposit funds once they've been received. You've got three options there: deposit paid into or registered with deposit scheme, deposit held by agent not registered with scheme, or deposit held by landlord. So you'll use this top option, deposit paid into or registered with deposit scheme, for 99% of your tenancies. This is the option you're going to use if the tenant's going to be paying that deposit money to you, and then you as the agent are going to be paying that money across to the deposit scheme, so you use a custodial based deposit scheme, or you're going to be registering that deposit with a scheme and then holding that money in a designated client account, whether that be a separate deposit account or your main client account, but you'll be holding on to that money for the duration of the tenancy. So if you as the agent are looking after that deposit, it's going to be that top option that you will use. If you have any let-onlys where the deposit is going to be paid across to the landlord, so the tenant is going to be paying that money to you, and then you'll be transferring that on to the landlord because they have their own DPS account or something like that perhaps, you're going to be selecting that bottom option. The middle option there, you're probably not going to be using very much, if at all. What that option is designed for is if you have any tenancies that aren't ASTs, so you're not legally obliged to register that deposit, and you're going to want to be moving that money from your client account into your main business account where you'll be holding it, you can select that middle option. If the deposit is going to be remaining within your client accounts, please don't select that middle option, it will be the top option that you want to use. So only if you're moving the money out of the client account across into your main business account will you select that middle option there. So top option 99% of the time, bottom option if you've got any deposits that are going across to the landlord, and then you've got that middle option there for the odd scenario where you'll be moving that deposit into your business account. So we've selected deposit paid into or registered with deposit scheme, and once we're happy we're going to click the save icon in the bottom right hand corner. We're waiting for two green pop-ups to confirm that our rent and our deposit have charged successfully. Once they have, what we'll see on our statement tab of our tenancy is we've now got that rent charge there and our deposit charge, both showing as outstanding. We've got a balance on our tenancy now, which is £3,800. So that's our rent and our deposit, less the holding fee that the tenant has already paid to us, meaning that the balance the tenant has to pay to us at this moment in time before they move in is £3,800. If we flick back to the details tab of our tenants, we'll see those dates that we entered into that first page have now pulled through here as well. And if I go to my tenants tab of my tenants, we'll see that Miss Aitchison now is set for her next rent to be due on the 20th of June of £2,000, and that rent charge will raise for me automatically when I need it to. Whilst we're talking about automatically raised rent charges, I'll just talk you through the way the rent charge process works with an expert agent. So every morning at 3 AM, expert agent does a rent run where it looks to see any tenancies that need to have rents charged. There are 5 fields that it looks at to deem whether a rent needs to be charged or not. If all those fields are satisfied, then it will look at that rent charge and it will raise it for you, and that rent charge will then appear on the day it's due. in your outstanding transactions and your rent arrears reports to alert you to the fact that that's due and allow you to receive it in. The fields that it's looking for are on the Details tab. It's looking to see if the tenancy is let, so it will only raise those charges on let tenancies. It's checking to see that the tenancy hasn't gone past its end date. It's looking for your tick in the automatically charged rent tick box here, and it's looking at your management type. So in terms of the management type, your rents will only raise automatically on either fully managed, guaranteed rent or rent collection tenancies. For any let-only tenancies or any that have been left as not known, those rents won't raise automatically for you. Once it's checked those first four things, it will then look at the Tenants tab and it will look at this rent next due date here. If that rent next due date is today or it's a day in the past, it will raise that rent charge for you automatically. So for our tenancy here, when we get to the 20th of June, Expert Agent is going to check those fields, and then at 3 AM on the 20th of June is going to raise a £2,000 rent charge from the 20th of June to the 19th of July, and that will pop up in my outstanding transactions and my rent arrears to alert me to the fact that the rent is now due. And this date here will forward itself on automatically to the 20th of July, and the same thing will keep happening month on month until that tenancy ends. So we've raised those initial charges. What we might want to do now at this stage is produce some sort of documentation for our tenants so that they can see what that balance is that they need to pay to us. The terminology that you're looking for that documentation in Expert Agent is a tenancy statement. It's not an invoice as it might be referred to in other softwares that you may have used. It's going to be a statement of that tenant's account with you. It's a tenancy statement. And the way you're going to raise that is by clicking the Print Statement button in the bottom left-hand corner. You're going to check that your from and to dates encompass any charges and receipts that you've raised so far. You're going to click the Save icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and that will take you through to your selected template screen. If you don't have a tenancy statement set up within here in your hour letters, you can default back to the Expert Agent default letters, where you'll have two separate statements to choose from, a tenancy statement and a tenancy statement detailed styled. These can be cloned across and the template edited to be personalised, including logos, etc., so that they then sit within your Our Letters tab. Once you're happy with your statement template, you're going to click on it. We'll tick to confirm and click Continue. And my statement will then open up on screen for me. This top section here displays how I've set it on my template. The middle section of the statement though is hard-coded, and this is basically just a printable version of what we were looking at on the screen. So it's our deposit demand, which is outstanding, our rent charge, again outstanding, and that receipt from Miss Aitchison, and the balance on the statement, the balance owed, the balance outstanding there is £3,800. We can print this statement out, or we can email it across to our tenant. Once we're done, we can close, and once that email has sent, it will appear on the Events tab of my tenancy record for me. The only other thing to look at in terms of your tenancy finance will be any permitted payments that you need to take from the tenant, or in the scenario where the tenant fee ban does not apply to you as an agency, any tenancy fees you might want to charge. The way you'll do either is by raising a sales invoice on the tenancy record. And to do that, you'll right click and you'll go to your financial submenu. You'll go to create sales invoice. You'll assign the tenant, give the invoice a description, add an item, select the nominal, Pop in the amount and save. Save in the bottom right hand corner. We're waiting for the green pop-up to confirm that the invoice has been created successfully. And then that charge will sit on our tenancy statement as outstanding and the balance will adjust accordingly. If you need more information on raising sales invoices, please do refer to the invoices video under the Lettings Financials menu. If the tenancy doesn't go ahead for any reason and you need to refund the holding fee back to the tenant, you need to right-click Financial, issue a refund, confirm the date you're refunding the money, select the tenant the money's going back to, confirm the bank account you're paying the money out of, confirm the refund amount, enter in any notes that you'd like to go alongside that refund, and click the save icon. You'll get the green pop-up confirming that that's posted successfully, and the payment back to the tenant will show on that tenancy statement there for you. That concludes our tenancy finance section. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video.